In 1990, Malaysia was a developing nation where 15% of the population lived in poverty. Rural villages lacked electricity and running water. Most Malaysians worked in agriculture earning subsistence wages. The country was classified as a lower middle-income nation with a future that looked uncertain at best. Fast forward 30 years to 2020, and something remarkable has happened. Malaysia's poverty rate dropped to just 5.6%, lifting 3 million people out of poverty in one generation. GDP per capita grew from $2,432 in 1990 to $11,414 in 2020, a 369% increase. Malaysia transformed from agricultural economy to industrial and service powerhouse, becoming an upper-middle-income country on the verge of developed nation status. This is one of the most successful poverty reduction stories in modern history, yet it's barely discussed outside Southeast Asia. While China's rise gets global attention, Malaysia quietly executed an economic miracle that matches or exceeds many celebrated development success stories. They did it without authoritarian control, without massive population advantages, and without the resource wealth of oil-rich Gulf states. In this video, we're revealing exactly how Malaysia escaped poverty in just 30 years, the strategies, policies, and decisions that transformed an entire nation. By the end, you'll understand why Malaysia's development model offers hope to every developing country still trapped in poverty. Let's uncover Malaysia's 30-year miracle. The starting point, 1990 Malaysia. To appreciate Malaysia's achievement, you must understand how poor they were in 1990. GDP per capita was just $2,432, less than Mexico, Thailand, or Turkey today. 15% lived below the poverty line. Rural poverty hit 21.8% with entire villages lacking basic infrastructure. My village in Pahang didn't have reliable electricity until 1993, recalls Ahmad Karim, now a successful businessman. We used kerosene lamps. Water came from a well. The road to town was unpaved. Going to high school meant leaving my family because there was no school nearby. That was normal Malaysian life in 1990. Malaysia's economy depended heavily on commodities: rubber, palm oil, tin, timber. These provided income, but not the high-value jobs needed to escape poverty. Manufacturing existed, but was mostly low-skilled, low-wage assembly work. The service sector was underdeveloped. Ethnic tensions created additional challenges. The 1969 racial riots had revealed deep economic inequalities between ethnic groups, particularly between wealthier Chinese Malaysians and poorer Malay Malaysians. The new economic policy, NEP, launched in 1970 aimed to address this, but by 1990, gaps remained. Malaysia in 1990 looked like it might stay poor forever, admits economist Dr. Tan Wei Ming. Commodity-dependent economies rarely escape poverty. The conventional wisdom said Malaysia would remain lower middle income indefinitely. What happened next defied expectations. Strategy number 1, Manufacturing Revolution, 1990 to 2000. Malaysia's first breakthrough was transforming from commodities to manufacturing. The government aggressively courted foreign investment with tax incentives, free trade zones, and infrastructure development. Japanese, American, and European manufacturers set up operations producing electronics, automotive parts, and machinery. But Malaysia did something smarter than just accepting foreign factories. They insisted on technology transfer, local hiring, and supplier development. Foreign companies had to train Malaysian workers, use Malaysian suppliers where possible, and eventually transfer management to locals. We weren't just cheap labor, explained Sarah Lim, who started as a factory worker in 1992 and now runs her own manufacturing firm. The Japanese factory that hired me trained me in quality control, production management, and eventually sent me to Japan for advanced training. When I left in 2003 to start my own company, I took that knowledge with me. Manufacturing's share of GDP grew from 27% in 1990 to 31% by 2000. But more importantly, manufacturing created millions of jobs paying far more than agricultural work. Rural Malaysians migrated to industrial areas, earning wages that lifted entire families out of poverty. Poverty rate 1990, 15% 1999, 7.5%. Nearly half of Malaysia's poor escaped poverty in this decade through manufacturing employment. Strategy number 2. Education revolution that actually worked. Most developing countries claim to prioritize education but fail to deliver results. Malaysia succeeded because they made education spending non-negotiable and aligned it with economic needs. Government education spending increased from 13.6% of the budget in 1990 to over 20% by 2000, among the highest rates globally. But spending time alone doesn't work. Malaysia ensured spending produced employable graduates. Technical schools partnered with industries. Engineering programs worked with manufacturing companies to design curricula. Polytechnics focused on practical skills industries needed. Education wasn't theoretical, it was preparation for actual jobs. My polytechnic education in 1995 was designed by companies that would hire me, explains David Chun, now an engineer. We learned on equipment those companies used. Instructors came from industry. Upon graduation, I had skills employers wanted immediately. That's why Malaysian education worked. It was practical. The results were dramatic. Tertiary education enrollment grew from 6% in 1990 to 23% by 2010. But unlike many countries where education doesn't reduce poverty, Malaysian education created employability that translated to income growth. Literacy rates hit 93% by 2000, up from 84% in 1990. A literate, skilled workforce attracted higher value industries, creating a virtuous cycle. Strategy number 3. Infrastructure that connected opportunity. You can't escape poverty if you can't access jobs, markets, or services. Malaysia invested massively in infrastructure that connected rural poor to economic opportunities. The North-South Expressway completed in 1994 connected peninsular Malaysia's entire length. Rural roads were paved. Electricity reached 99% of households by 2000, up from 82% in 1990. Telecommunications infrastructure expanded rapidly. Infrastructure was poverty reduction, notes Dr. Priya Sharma, development economist. When rural villages got electricity, children could study at night. When roads connected villages to towns, farmers could sell produce at better prices. When phones reached remote areas, people could find jobs in cities. Physical connectivity translated directly to economic opportunity. Port infrastructure expanded to handle growing trade. Airports improved to attract tourism and business. Malaysia's strategic location controlling the Strait of Malacca was leveraged through world-class port development. Investment in infrastructure wasn't just building things. It was deliberately connecting poor communities to economic opportunities that didn't exist before. Strategy number 4. The 1997 crisis and controversial recovery. Then came 1997. The Asian financial crisis could have destroyed Malaysia's progress. The ringgit collapsed 50%. GDP shrank 7.4% in 1998. Unemployment surged. Poverty threatened to explode. Prime Minister Mahathir made the controversial decision to reject IMF assistance and impose capital controls, the opposite of what economic orthodoxy recommended. Western economists predicted disaster. Instead, Malaysia recovered faster than countries following IMF prescriptions. Capital controls prevented speculators from destroying the currency. Fixed exchange rates provided stability. Government spending prevented demand collapse. The 1997 crisis could have sent Malaysia back to poverty, Dr. Tan reflects. Instead, it proved Malaysia could weather shocks without abandoning its development model. By 1999, growth resumed. The crisis became a test Malaysia passed. This crisis management preserved poverty reduction gains. Countries that followed IMF austerity saw poverty explode. Malaysia protected its poor during the crisis, then resumed poverty reduction afterward. Poverty rate 1999, 7.5%, 2004, 5.7%. Even through crisis and recovery, poverty continued declining. Strategy number 5, moving up the value chain, 2000 to 2020. The second phase of Malaysia's miracle involved moving from low-value manufacturing to high-value industries. Electronics shifted from simple assembly to semiconductor testing and design. Malaysia became a hub for multinational corporations' regional operations. The services sector expanded dramatically: finance, tourism, education, healthcare. Malaysia positioned itself as a medical tourism destination. Islamic finance center, and education hub for regional students. Malaysia didn't stay in low-wage manufacturing, explains business consultant James Park. They continuously upgraded. Every decade, Malaysian workers did more sophisticated work for higher wages. That's how you escape poverty permanently, constant upgrading. The Multimedia Super Corridor launched in 1996 aimed to make Malaysia a tech hub. While not fully successful, it created a foundation for Malaysia's growing digital economy. By 2020, services contributed 59% of GDP, manufacturing 23%, with agriculture falling to 7.3%. This structural transformation meant higher productivity and wages across the economy. GNI per capita growth: 1990 $2,432, 2020 $11,414, 369% increase. Strategy number 6: social safety nets that worked. Malaysia didn't rely purely on economic growth to reduce poverty. They built safety nets preventing people from falling back into poverty during transitions. The Bantuan Rakyat 1 Malaysia (BR1M) cash transfer program provided direct assistance to low-income households. Healthcare was heavily subsidized. Public hospitals provide near-free care to citizens. Education remained affordable even at university levels. Safety nets meant that when people moved from agriculture to manufacturing, or when factories closed, they didn't immediately fall back into poverty, notes social policy expert Dr. Lisa Wong. This created security that encouraged risk-taking and career transitions. Targeted programs addressed specific poverty populations, rural development schemes, indigenous community programs, and urban poor assistance. Poverty reduction wasn't just about growth. It was about ensuring growth's benefits reached the poorest. Strategy number 7: leveraging ethnic diversity. Malaysia's ethnic diversity, Malay, Chinese, Indian, indigenous, could have been a poverty trap as different groups competed. Instead, Malaysia turned it into an economic advantage. The NEP aimed to reduce ethnic economic gaps by creating Malay entrepreneurship and middle class, while preserving Chinese and Indian economic contributions. While controversial and imperfect, it prevented ethnic economic segregation that traps many diverse nations in poverty. Chinese-Malaysian business networks connected Malaysia to Chinese markets and capital. Indian Malaysians are linked to India's growing economy. Malay Malaysians controlled the government and ensured political stability. Each group contributed different strengths. Diversity became an advantage when every group had a stake in national success, explains sociologist Dr. Ahmad Rahman. Poverty reduction benefited all ethnicities, creating shared interest in continued development. The 2020 achievement: mission accomplished. By 2020, Malaysia had essentially eliminated extreme poverty and dramatically reduced overall poverty. Poverty rate: 5.6%, down from 15% in 1990. Extreme poverty: virtually eliminated. GDP per capita: $11,414, from $2,432 in 1990. Upper middle income country status achieved. On track for high-income developed nation status. More importantly, the poverty reduction was broad-based. Rural poverty fell from 21.8% 1990 to 9% 2019. Urban poverty fell from 7.3% 1990 to 3.8% 2019. All ethnic groups saw poverty reductions. Regional disparities decreased significantly. 3 million Malaysians escaped poverty in 30 years, Dr. Tan summarizes. That's 100,000 people per year, every year, for 3 decades. That consistency is the real miracle. What made Malaysia's miracle work? Malaysia succeeded where many developing nations fail because of specific factors. Pragmatic policy over ideology. Malaysia adapted policies to work rather than following ideological purity, accepting foreign investment while protecting local industries, building capitalism while maintaining welfare, pursuing growth while reducing inequality. Education actually aligned with jobs. Unlike countries producing unemployable graduates, Malaysian education created employability. Infrastructure connected opportunity. Roads, electricity, and telecommunications linked poor communities to economic growth. Ethnic diversity managed effectively. Potential divisions became economic advantages through inclusive policies. Crisis management protected gains. The 1997 response proved Malaysia could weather shocks without reversing poverty reduction. Continuous upgrading. Malaysia never stayed static, constantly moving to higher value activities. We want to hear from you. Does Malaysia's poverty reduction story inspire you? What lessons could other developing nations learn? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this revealed an economic miracle you never knew about, smash that like button and subscribe. Watch next. Can Malaysia reach developed nation status? The next chapter in Malaysia's economic journey.